during December. I'm mentioning this because I take it as important at this stage. But my initial period in the portfolio therefore focused once more on organizational structures, focused on governance, and I must add systemic issues as well. But I pegged them under governance matters and requirements. So dealt with accountability mechanisms within SAPS. We dealt with budgetary issues and what gets considered in terms of allocating a budget across the organization. And of course, we spoke about the need to consolidate temporal task teams within the South African Police Service. These issues formed the foundation for subsequent engagements, particularly in November and December 2024.
Thank you, Minister. Before we move on to the next topic, I just want to clarify two issues which may not be clear from your statement before you move on. In paragraph 17 of your statement, you refer to orientation-focused meetings that were held, and you say that there were recurring themes across sessions held on 12 June. You only started in July. So I just want to know, the 12 June, is that an error? You say that the announcement was made, you were appointed the 30th of June, and these orientation sessions happened in July 2024, but the first date in that paragraph refers to 12 June.
Yes, it would be.
Is it 12 July?
It would be 12 July.
Thank you. And then the second issue, just for clarity, at paragraph 24 of your statement, where you deal about the 6 December raid, you say that at no stage during my orientation or in the briefings that I received, in the paragraph 17 that we dealt with, you speak about sessions that seem to end on 19 November 2024, but you said earlier on that those sessions, the orientation sessions, went beyond December, correct?
Can you repeat that?
Yes. You said earlier on in your evidence that the orientation sessions went on beyond December. But in paragraph 17, you refer to certain sessions. If you can just go back to paragraph 17 of your statement where we just corrected the area. I just want to make sure that we understand what you're saying in paragraph 17. Are you saying in paragraph 17 that those specific dates mentioned there were sessions where the issue about the crime intelligence was raised? Or are you saying that those are the only orientation sessions that were held?
No, I was making an example that those dates there was a focus almost on one particular issue, that is crime intelligence. And of course, we went up to December, but I do say that in certain aspects, we did go beyond December, still on orientation, the type of which involved decision-making, discussion, not just pure orientation at this stage.
Okay, and then just back to paragraph 24, so that is the orientation. You also say at no stage during my orientation or in the briefings. Are you speaking to briefings as being something separate to orientation, or are you using it interchangeably? Where you say in paragraph 24, at no stage during my orientation or in the briefings.
Oh, yes. During my orientation or in the briefings, I'm using that interchangeably, but I know that each one has a specific meaning, but in the context, I'm just using them interchangeably.
Okay. And when you speak about at no stage during my orientation or in the briefings, are we referring specifically to the period 2024, or are you also speaking about January 2025, because you've now said in your evidence that the orientation process went beyond December?
I'm talking about, or I'm referring to the orientation period up to December.
Okay.
Yes.
So if we are to understand paragraph 24, what you're saying is at no stage during 2024 were you briefed about a 6 December raid, or are you saying that at no stage at all in your time as the Minister of Police were you briefed about the 6 December raid?
Probably I'm saying both, that we were not, or I was not briefed about any operation resembling, if you could underline that one, resembling what came to be described later on as the 6 December raid. That is to say, a briefing that would say on such and such a day, police will be mounting a particular operation of this nature, beyond operations like Operation Nhlanhla that you would hear about, but these other ones, specific ones, were confined to police only.
And am I correct to say that you're dealing with that aspect specifically because you would have heard the evidence of General Masimola and General Kumalo that on the 16th of January 2025, they had briefed you about this operation and the arrest of Mr. Katiso Molefe and the links with senior officials where General Sabia's name was specifically mentioned with criminal syndicate, links with the criminal syndicate?
Yes, although I will deal with those matters later on.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify that. So then the next topic then is the establishment of the PKTT. You may proceed. It starts at paragraph 26 of your statement on page 9.
The National Political Killings Task Team, and I want to make reference to that, use that, but and explain it so that we have synergy. In all the documents that relate to this task team, it is referred to as the National Political Killings Task Team or the National Task Team, or in some specific cases called PKTT. I'm just saying this to remove any confusion, especially one that I picked up in another commission in Parliament, where there was sort of an outright denial that there's something called National Political Killings Task Team. And there are reasons for that, that it was called National Political Task Team. It refers to the budget. It refers to the leadership of the National Political Task Team, in particular, to make it virtually national. So it was established in 2018 by an inter-ministerial committee chaired by the Minister of Police. Now, the interministerial committee itself was appointed by the President of the Republic, President Cyril Ramaphosa. This was in response to a surge which had been building over time in KwaZulu-Natal, a surge in what came to be described as political killings, which refers to the murders or assassinations of people occupying political positions in that province, in some cases also together with officials in government structures. Now, there was then a concern that there was a surge, a noticeable surge, and it was like consistent. And the president then decided that he would appoint an interministerial committee, and he instructed them to work on a mechanism that would contain the situation and actually reverse that trend that was taking root at that particular time. Now, it was created as a special project, just like in the language in government, where a special project can be created in any department. And it was established through an exercise of executive authority. Now, I need to emphasize that it was established through, if you like, political intervention, where the president was using his executive powers to intervene in a situation as was necessary. It was not established in terms of Section 11(2)(d) of the Constitution of the Republic. Section 11(2)(d) of the South African Police Act 68 of 1995, which, in other words, a combination of the two, which empowers the National Commissioner to establish components or units within SAPS Its creation was therefore political and time-bound, and it did not form part of SAPS' permanent organizational structure. National Commissioner can establish a task team anytime he sees fit, and using the powers bestowed on him by the Constitution and by the Police Act. A provincial commissioner can also do so. Even at district level, such task teams can be established. But the National Political Killings Task Team wasn't one of those established by the National Commissioner. It was established through that political intervention in the exercise of executive powers by the President. Now, because the NPKTT was a project, it was always understood that it was interim in nature. It was never at any stage understood to be a permanent kind of setup. And I must distinguish between a team at this stage to clarify my point. It was never established as a unit. It was established as a team, actually a task team. Now, and there's a difference between a team and a unit in SAPS. And I'm explaining that because at one point when the commission was on, and Major General Van Rooyen was asked a specific question in this regard, she said, if I remember correctly, she said, there's no difference between a unit and a team. And there is a difference. Now, the NPKTT was established as a project. It was allocated a specific budget taken from various programs at the time. In other words, it was not budgeted for in a normal way where you budget for a program in a department. It had a team that just been set up mid-year, and then a budget had to be found to make it move on as required. Now, as such, like the principles that apply to all other projects of government, it would require periodic extensions or assessments, not extensions, but periodic assessments. It would require a budget to run. It would require a period which would be at which it will end. There's no project that I'm aware of in government that runs indefinitely. They are all time bound. Now, the initial mandate of the NPKTT was actually for 6 months, not 6 years, 6 months, from July 2018 to the end of the year. It was then extended from January to July 2019. And thereafter, they decided that if any extension, it would be annual. But initially, it was 6 months. That's why at the end of the first 6 months, there was an assessment. And it was decided consciously that there would need to be an extension, which was for another 6 months. Now, in 2020, there was COVID in the country, and there was no assessment that was made of the PKTT in that year. The following year, 2021, an assessment was conducted. And as required, and an extension signed off by the National Commissioner, and the National Political Killings Task Team was ultimately appointed or apportioned its funding for the relevant year because of its extension. Now, beyond 2022, because this was an extension between 2021 and 2022, there was no further extension that was sought in the same manner, I should qualify that, as it had happened before. And there's marked differences when you look at the previous extensions and after 2022. As a result, the NPKTT continued to operate without a required assessment and renewal for more than 2 years. And I'm advised that the relevant expenditure during this period beyond 2022 on the NPKTT is irregular under the PFMA, Act 1 of 1999. So what I'm explaining here is that the National Political Killings Task Team was a project. It had a project leader. It was not a unit in SAPS, and it had no budget allocated, but budget had to be found from other programs, even during extensions to fund it. And it's had a clear objective, and it had to be subjected to regular assessments, and costs had to be calculated. At each time there would be an extension, just like all other projects of government, and it was time bound all the time, from the time it was conceptualized. It was never an open-ended. It was 6 months, and next 6 months, and next a year, and then next a year. But after 2022, there were no longer, I would say, proper assessments in the true sense of the word.
Okay. Thank you, Minister. You then have a subtopic, but before we get to that subtopic, at paragraph 31, you mentioned that you are advised. Are you speaking about advice that you had received at the time when you were considering the PKTT or having regard to the PKTT, or now that it was in violation?
Now.
Now,
Yes.
Okay. You may proceed to the subtopic, which is the shift towards permanent structures. And you do set out here facts that, of course, you don't have personal knowledge of, but you do reference a work study, which you say you would have had knowledge of, because would that have been part of your orientation? Yes, if you could just deal with that briefly, please.
In September 2018, SAPS initiated feasibility studies for a new specialized investigative capacities, including murder and robbery, anti-gang, taxi violence, and cold cases or cold case investigations. These findings were later consolidated in the 2019 work study. In 2018-2019, feasibility studies confirmed that political murders were already within the core mandate of murder and robbery capacities and didn't require a parallel.
Effectively done.
Now, this work study understood or conceptualized and understood in the manner that I've outlined by those who were dealing with it, effectively disestablished the NPKTT. Now, and established a single murder and robbery unit that would carry out the various functions of the different task teams under one umbrella. I must pause here and indicate that at one point, I don't know whether it was a month after I got appointed, I had the privilege of meeting former National Commissioner for another purpose. And I may as well indicate that the purpose was to deal with a problem that he had, or a problem that he had regarding his pension. And that meeting took place in September, or around that time. We were to discuss his complaint that he was not getting his pension. And we then had an informal chat. But I had asked him a question in the process. What is this thing called cold investigations? And then he explained, and in the process, he then took me through the work study and various matters, not in the form of a presentation, but as we were chatting. Now, I'm noting that because he didn't seem to be interested in serious and violent crimes more than in murder and robbery. That is where his emphasis were. Now, on 14 November 2019, as we continue, Major General Mzima signed an implementation letter, now implementing the work study that had been commissioned